The monarchy has served such a horrendous role in world history.
Would you prefer the India that existed before colonialism?
Yes, actually.
Which one?
Which one?
There was no such country as India prior to colonialism.
Okay.
Technically speaking, there really wasn't after colonialism because it fractured into India and Pakistan. If it had been perhaps a little bit more honest and called itself and said India fractured into Pakistan and Hindustan, which is what some people had called.
Wait, are you defending like British colonialism right now?
Well, of course he's defending British colonialism, but he's doing it incoherently. What the f is he talking about? It's like, oh, well, how can you say that British colonialism was bad if before British colonialism, India wasn't even what India is today, but India today isn't even what India was then because it's fractured into India and Pakistan. So, like, well, he's not saying anything. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. What does that mean? What?
Yes.
As a net
Keffals,
positive,
yes,
how do you justify that? Like,
why does India have a parliament?
Why does India?
What do you think its system of government was before we came along? And the answer is it was no one system of government. India only became a single unified state.
And why is that the preferred? Why is a single unified state the preferred?
I like how he's implying that the British Empire did a favor by unifying the territories that would later split into India and Pakistan. Like, oh, well, if it wasn't for us, then how would those two groups have been lumped together? What are you talking about? That's the source of every problem. This isn't just like colonial apologism. This is like a British dude pointing at a map of the Middle East and going, and if it wasn't for us, then how do you think these lines would have gotten here? How do you think... If you claim to have a problem with the British Empire, do you? Well, then, explain to me, chap, how would we have gotten Afghanistan in this exact wibbly-wobbly shape? Could you tell me that, lad? Because it certainly wasn't like that before we got there. What? I know! Yeah, I know! If it wasn't for our involvement in the Indian subcontinent, then how could we have expected to have procured what is now one of the most deadly ongoing standoffs between nuclear nations? How would we get Pakistan and India threatening to nuke each other every other day? Could you tell me that, chap? What? I don't want that. I don't think that's good. Go back.
Third position for India. That was something that was imposed on them.
There would be no such country as India. Gandhi's dream of we should have today a free India would literally have been impossible to implement before colonialism.
Because they wouldn't have called it India.
Get every individual principality to agree to it, and there's no way they would have, because it would have required those individual princes to give up way too much power. And if we're being honest...
Was there a political movement towards a unified India before British colonialism even?
No.
Then why is that something that matters if that wasn't something that existed before post-colonial India even existed?
Because if you're going to celebrate the Indian nation, say, oh, the Indian nation should be free, there couldn't be an Indian nation without the British colonialism.
No! What? You can't celebrate people's freedom from colonialism if the colonizers impose the national boundaries that they later were subjugated to, that later fractured and split apart and caused the India and Pakistan divide in multiple wars. Holy shit! Is he fucking retarded? No. This is ideology. Schniff. His first belief is that the colonial powers were good. Everything else comes second to that. So it doesn't matter how much evidence gets in the way of that belief. That is the belief that he has. So everything else is like completely subject to that, you know? And it makes sense for a monarchist, you know, he rejects Enlightenment values. And one of the Enlightenment values that he probably believes he has in spades but doesn't is rationality, a belief in empirical evidence. You know, he's rejected what many would consider to be the primary social value of the Enlightenment, but he's also done so with the, you know, the primary empirical value. I feel like being pro-colonialism is automatically kind of retarded. Well, yes, but I only mean to say that the problem here isn't like lower brain functionality, tempting as it might be to assign it to that. It's just, you know, people do be wacky.
Right, but that's something that was imposed on them.
Yes, much as how the idea of a central British state was imposed upon us by the Romans. We were several smaller microstates until Rome came along. The light of civilization is often spread by the sword. It's unfortunate, but...
Oh, you know this dude loves his fucking his Crusader Kings, dude. Holy shit. In his mind, like he's carving a marble statue of himself, dude. Holy fuck. He's a stereotype. Yeah, Hearts of Iron 4 ass motherfucker, yeah. I like how he assumes the innate moral superiority of like centralized states, like having one gigantic state rather than a bunch of smaller ones. Why? I don't know. Hey guys, here's a question, you know? If like the Red Chinese invaded Europe and then conquered all of it and like melted down the 30 or 40 European nations into one or two mega nations, would that have been the light of civilization? Like, oh, okay, so now Albanians and Serbians get to you're part of the same state now. Congratulations. German and French, have fun. Polish and Russian, let's go. Of course he wouldn't, because he likes it when white people get to dictate the terms of existence for non-white people, not the other way around. This dude's 100% racist. Like that's pretty obvious, of course, but you know, it bears repeating that this is not like an a-racial attitude.
Very often there's no alternative.
No, there is an alternative, because you're making it sound like the project. You're making it sound like the project behind colonialism by the crown.
Is this a unitary dictatorship versus federal democracy? No. Listen, the consequences of a colonial nation deciding the borders of a colonized nation are like almost always a failure. Like every time. Seriously, what we did in Africa, what we did in the Middle East, what we did in Southeast Asia, what we did in India, like literally every time the British Empire, whoever else, is like, oh, well, all right, chaps. So we know you have a bunch of religious, ethnic, and linguistic differences, but you see here, there's the same natural resources in all this part of the world, so we're just going to sort of fold you all into the same colonial protectorate, and you're all going to get along just fine, won't you? Won't you? Won't you? Won't you? And then, of course, inevitably, people rise up and kill the fucking colonizers because they've been slaughtering 1 billion trillion innocent people every year. And then, whoa! It turns out that all these different ethnic and religious groups actually don't like each other that much. Something you'd think the British would understand, considering they've been at war with France for 5 million years, you know? Like, you'd think they would understand that just because you're next to another country does not necessarily mean that you're, like, going to share borders with them and get along just fine. But one thing that's important to understand, of course, is that the British did not think of the Indians as properly human. Nor does this guy.
Was bringing civilization, but it was about extracting resources from the colonies.
Can I just address someone in your
yes,
Mr. Carlin Cole? Genocide was good, actually. What makes you think colonialism was genocidal? Colonialism has not been, I would say, generally genocidal. There's one major instance I can think of a colonial government committing genocide, and that was Germany in Namibia, where it genocided
the Bengal famine was an act of genocide committed by the government of the United Kingdom.
That's going a bit far, I think.
It is recognized as a genocide by the government of India.
I respectfully disagree with the government of India.
Based on what? Like, what are you basing that on? Like, are you actually going to defend what the British did?
Of course he will. Yeah. He'll defend like literally anything. Yeah.
They didn't bring. The reason why the political situation is like it is because of the British. It's not because of the Irish. If you look at the Republic, it is significantly more peaceful than the North.
That doesn't seem entirely fair, isn't it? A lot of the separatist movements were founded by people down south.
Well, why do you have separatist movements?
To become monarchic, but the South is calling for the North to become Republican. The South is the one not willing to leave well enough alone.
That's absolutely not true, by the way. Separatist groups have been operating within and from Northern Ireland for ever, basically. The idea that it's all just like nation of Ireland rabble-rousers is completely untrue. But again, he probably also thinks the Irish are subhuman, and that the Irish living under Northern Ireland UK control are like totally like they're all just like peaceful cattle, you know, grazing on their plains, you know, under British rule.
No, the call for joining the Republic is happening from inside the North. I don't think there have been any modern statements, at least since the peace process, of calls from the Republican government of the Republic of Ireland for the North to join them.
They literally do have that that saying, was it, they want all 38 counties? Or is it all 32 counties? That is quite a popular Republican saying there. And furthermore, that whole, oh, we're not directly trying to annex them, we're just funding movements in their country that want to do that. That's also what the CIA does.
How do
Vladimir Putin does.
You can't annex somewhere that is not, that doesn't belong to you. Like, that was taken from Irish people. You can't annex them.
What was taken from Irish people?
Ireland. Ireland was taken from Irish people.
No, it was rightfully conquered.
Rightfully conquered?
This is... Okay, remember how I've said before that white supremacists will play this really weird semantic game where they will decry non-white people as savages and warlords and barbarians who know nothing but violence, and then, like, they'll gleefully explain how Aryan people or white people or whatever have a right to some part of the world because they successfully fought for it. And it's like this, it's this meaningless rhetorical game where, like, they clearly don't mind violence, but violence they do is based in red-pilled, and violence that non-white people do is, like, evidence of their warrior craniums being incapable of civilized thought or something. It's the exact same attitude here, you know? He's, like, decrying the incivility of separatist movements being funded by the South, but then with no irony, he will say, ah, well, we didn't steal Northern Ireland. We conquered it. It's like, wait, so you think it's wrong to fund separatist movements, but right to conquer with, like, a nation? That's fine? And the answer, of course, is whenever it's his guy, it's fine. No, yes, he is wildly overstating the extent to which Southern Ireland is responsible for separatist agitation within the North.
There is no such thing as rightful conquest.
Of course there is. If you shut down all rightful conquest in history, well, we never would have been conquered by the Romans, and you still wouldn't have civilization in Britain.
Dude, we're never getting through this because this guy drops a banger every, like, 2 seconds. Sorry, guys. If Rome hadn't fucking conquered Britannia 5 billion years ago, we still wouldn't have running water in the UK. That's how it works, actually. The only way to ascend up the tech tree is to have a larger country colonize you. It's literally the only way. If that hasn't happened, then you're stuck with shitting in fucking outhouses for the rest of your life, lad. Yeah, that's why African states conquered by the British are now wealthy industrial superpowers. Yeah, true, exactly, yeah. Of course, because they were colonized so many times, and that's what brought them civilization, you know? Like, Zimbabwe is doing fantastically after Rhodesia.
How far back are we going to take this? Did Romulus not have the right to kill Remus?
What? Jesus
Did the Greeks
Christ!
not have the right to attack Troy?
No, I'm not going to take this all the way back to ancient Rome.
Why not? No, if we.
Why not? Because I think it's a distraction from recent issues. I think.
Well, did conquest? Oh, did some magical button get flipped in the year 1900, and then conquest suddenly became wrong?
No, because you can't. No, because you can't flip a button.
Well, then why is it? When did it become wrong to engage in conquest? Keffals?
It was always wrong to engage in conquest.
Then we can go all the way back to ancient Rome.
Yes.
But what does that have to do with the situation between...
Yeah, okay. So, again, this guy has cuckold brain. So, because he projects himself as part of, like, a long lineage of glorious fucking Hearts of Iron 4 civs or whatever, like, because this guy thinks entirely in the board game Risk, he thinks, like, well, you can't say warfare is unethical. If you do, then you'll have to say that the glorious progenitors of our civilization are unethical. Yes. Well, you can't do that. Why can't we just say, like, hey, history is made up of a great fabric of people doing good and bad things, and this is a bad thing, and it's had a lot of influence in how the world is today, but that doesn't mean that it's morally good. Like, things can be morally bad and influential. There's nothing inconsistent about believing that. But then he doesn't get to idealize his daddies. I just think that he thinks of himself as, like, maybe not necessarily, like, a bloodline, but, like, an ideological line of enlightened gentle sirs who understand that the world is a grim place, and he has to do what he has to do, and what must be done, and these peasant-brained individuals cannot comprehend the moral necessity of killing 5 bajillion Indians in the Bengal famine or whatever. Yeah, it's like a guy who reads Warhammer 40k books, but takes them, like, seriously. No, it literally is that. Yeah, this would be like the kind of guy who would read like the books and go like, you know, yeah, the Imperium does what it does to defend mankind. There is no other way, and like be like the worst guy to meet at the game shops, you know?